Welcome back, everyone. This is the third video in these series of videos where we're talking about supply chain contracts that can be signed to share risk and reward, right? So we looked at buyback contracts in the last video. In this video, we'll be talking about the revenue sharing, the idea of a revenue sharing contract, right? So revenue sharing contract is a contract where the manufacturer charges the retailer a low wholesale price C, for which the retailer acquires the item from the manufacturer, but the retailer will share a fraction of the retailer's revenue. Now, it's important to understand revenue, that's gross profits and not net profits, right? So this allows both the manufacturer and retailers to increase their profits. It also results in low retailer effort, but it does require a robust information infrastructure. That is, the retailer must tell the manufacturer exactly how many items they sold, and the manufacturer must believe the retailer on how many items got sold, right? So there is some trust and some robust infrastructure that is required. But if that is done, revenue sharing can be a great contract where both the manufacturer and the retailer can get more out of a supply chain, right? Information distortion can lead to excess inventory. That's a problem. Usually with not usually, that's a possibility in a revenue sharing contract that is not done when both the retailer and manufacturer are trust each other, right? Okay, so let's see how a revenue sharing contract works, right? Okay, all right. So in a revenue sharing contract, let's say that F here represents the fraction of revenue that is shared with the manufacturer. So the retailer retains 1 minus F. So if F is say 30% or 50%, for example, then the retailer will retain another 50%. If F is 40%, retailer will retain 60% of the profit. So 60% of the profit, that's how much the retailer keeps, times this is the sales price. So 60% of the sales price is what is retained by the retailer. And the 40% is sent to the manufacturer. So when calculating the cycle service level, you only keep the 60% part and not the 40% part. So you can calculate the expected profit for the manufacturer, which is C minus V plus F times O minus the expected overstock at the retail, right? So that's the expected profit for the manufacturer. And the expected profit for the expected retailer profit is also given here. So using this, we can calculate the profits for both the manufacturer and retailer, and then we can make a informed decision. Let's see how this works out, right? So let's look at an example. Let's assume that the wholesale price is $1. Revenue sharing is 45%, which means that 45% of all revenue is sent to the manufacturer. Let's say that the salvage value is 0. And yeah, so the retailer salvage value is 0 and the manufacturer salvage value is also 0. Let's assume all of that, right? So with this, we can calculate everything that needs to be calculated, right? So let's go back to the Excel sheet. So again, I'm going to make a separate copy. I'm going to create a copy. I'm going to call this revenue sharing. All right. Okay. So instead of calling, so I'll keep the vertical integration. No, not the vertical. I'll keep the no coordination, but let's do revenue sharing here. Right. So revenue sharing, this stays the same. Manufacturer's cost is still $1. So this stays the same. Okay, let's get rid of this for the time. We'll come back to this. Right. So manufacturer's cost is $1. And the wholesale cost is $5. So that doesn't change. So we'll say this is the retailer salvage. Retailer salvage value is $0. We're assuming that. Then we'll say that the revenue share. So revenue share, that's the new value that we are looking at. So I'm gonna insert a row there. So revenue share, let's say, is 45%. Okay. is not a dollar value, that is just a percentage, right? So let's say revenue share is 45%. So what's the cost of understocking and cost of overstocking, right? So if you're understocked, which means that you don't have enough items, then you're losing out on the profit. Cost of understocking remains the same, right? So it's not based upon the revenue share, but the cost of overstocking does change. So if you look at here, cost of understocking does change because we are increasing the sales price here. Right? Sorry. The cost of overstocking is the one that doesn't change. It stays at $1. All right. So let's go back to this Excel file. A couple of changes that need to be made. First thing is that the manufacturer's cost is $1 and the wholesale cost is also going to be $1. So that's the assumption that we are making here. Now these two need not be the same, right? So the wholesale cost can, let's say, be $2, which means that the manufacturer is still making some money on the books that they're selling the retailer, even if they're doing revenue sharing, right? So let's assume in this case they're not making any with 45%. So the cost of understocking is sales price. So instead of sales price, this will be 55% of sales price, right? So 1 minus 45%. So that's 55% of sales price. That's how much the retailer is retaining minus the wholesale cost, right? The cost of overstocking will stay at 1% and the cycle service level will be 81.82%, and the optimal order quantity will be 1,273, right? Now 1,273 books. Now the expected overstock is 302 books, so that's what we see. I guess 303 because I rounded up. I guess they rounded down, but that's okay. Expected overstock is 303. 303, it's not going to matter that much, right? Now let's look at the profit for the retailer and the profit for the manufacturer, right? Going back to the PowerPoint file, right? So we have to calculate the profit for the manufacturer and the profit for the retailer, and we can calculate that using these numbers here, right? So let's first look at the manufacturer's profit. So the manufacturer's profit is this is how much money they make plus percentage of the profit is because obviously they cannot retain the overstock part. So let's write out the profit for the manufacturer, right? So the profit for the manufacturer. So let me go back to the Excel file. I'm gonna move that. Maybe make this a little bigger so I can see the formula here. Right. So the profit for the manufacturer is so in this case, the wholesale cost and the manufacturer's cost are the same, but wholesale cost minus the manufacturer's cost, right? Times the optimal order quantity. So again, like I said, the manufacturer can still make some money if, let's say, the wholesale cost in this case is $1, the same as the manufacturer's cost, but they don't have to be. They can be different numbers, right? So that's the first part of the manufacturer's profit, any profit that they actually make. Plus now the revenue share portion. So the revenue share portion, so they are getting 45%, right? So it's going to be 45% times, right? The sales price that they have, so sales price is $10. So 45% of $10 times the number of units that they expect to sell. And the number of units that they expect to sell is the optimal, is the order quantity that you had minus any overstock that you expect. So this is how many items you expect to sell. So it's order quantity minus the overstock, right? There you go. And so the manufacturer's profit is 4,366, right? So 4,369 for them because again they did 302. I have 303 because of slight rounding up and down. So that's the only difference. But let's look at the profit for the retailer. So profit for the retailer will be, well, it'll be so it will be 1 minus 45%. So they keep 55% of the profit, right? So 1 minus 45% times the sales price. So that's how much money the retailer will retain, times the number of units that they expect to sell. And the number of units they expect to sell is the optimal order quantity minus the expected overstock, right? So that's how many units they expect to sell. That's 55% of the sales prices with them, and so 55% of the sales prices with them, and this is how many units they expect to sell, right? Plus any salvage value that they expect to make. Now, in this case, with the retailer does not have any salvage value, so that's the salvage value is 0. But in case the retailer has some sort of salvage value, so we have times the expected overstock at the retailer, right? Expected overstock at the retailer minus the cost of buying the item. So minus the cost of buying the item. So they buy it at the wholesale cost. And how many items do they buy? They buy the number of items that they order, right? 4,064. Like I said, it's slightly different from the numbers in the book because of the 303 versus 302. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. So 8,431 is how much I got. They got 8,437 because they have an expected overstock of 302. They rounded it differently than I did, right? So that's it. So that's the idea here. So if you look at the vertical integration, 8,473, this is 8,431. So it's close, but it's not all the way there. So with the buyback contract, you were able to get to 8,269. Again, this is because with the buyback of $3, with a higher buyback, there might be more synergies and things like that, but you never know, right? So that's the idea of a revenue sharing contract, right? So again, I can copy this, paste it there, right? And right. So the difference is now here. Right. So there now you're able to extract $628 more than you were able to without any coordination. Right, and the retailer increases their profit, the manufacturer also increases their profit. In the buyback contract, you'll notice that given the buyback price, the manufacturer really doesn't make that much more. They basically stay essentially level. It's a retailer that extracts most of the profit here, but in this revenue sharing contract, you'll notice that the manufacturer has extracted more of the excess surplus. Now, both the retailer and the manufacturer are making more money, right? But it's a manufacturer who made the lion's share of money here as expected, as opposed to the retailer. And that comes down to the revenue share. So if the revenue share is say 40%, this might be a different number. So let's say the revenue share was 40%, right? Right? Now that won't work because the manufacturer is now making a loss, right? The retailer is the one who's making most profit, right? So let's say that it was 50%. In that case, the retailer is now making a loss. Right? So between 40 and 50 seems to be the right number. So 45% is the number that was chosen. So let's say that it was say 43%. Now the retailer is making more of the money, right? So if it was 46%, the manufacturer is making even more of the money, right? So that's essentially the idea. Okay. All right, so these are the revenue sharing contracts. I will stop this video here. In the next video, we'll talk about quantity flexibility contracts. They are slightly more complex, but we'll talk about them in the next video. All right, take care.